I'll start. My name is Jean Martinez. I am from Chequilao Community School in Aventura, Florida. I have with me Avi and AJ. They will work in the IT department, and I am the IT manager.
Jean, it's so nice to put a face with the name since we've talked so many times. So I'm excited you could be on here. And Bob and Buddy, thanks so much for using the chat as we're getting started. You guys are going to be hearing a lot from Bob and Greg and Michael today, and they're going to introduce themselves as we get closer to the 1 o'clock hour. I love seeing Pitt Community Schools. Totally biased from this North Carolina girl. Thank you guys for being on here. And RSD 13, I have missed you guys since our pizza party. Yes, Meredith, go Pirates! I almost wore my pirate shirt, but I was told I had to wear Hayes stuff, so thanks for that call out. Hey, Chuck. Yes, Tracy, that is the best hat on screen. That's fantastic. All right, guys, as everyone's continuing to join in, keep doing that roll call in the chat. It's making me so happy to start to put names and faces together. Like I said, we'll get started here shortly. Wow, Pitt County coming in with the most attendance. I like it. All right, guys, we're gonna get started and I'm gonna start sharing my screen as people are starting to come in too. Rebecca is going to be letting them in. I'm going to be monitoring the chat along with the help of Tim Brown, who is one of our National Account Associates today. If you want to pin some of the speakers to your Zoom, it's going to be Bob Fistrom and he can wave. And then it's also going to be, it says MPROCOPO. That's Michael, he's going to be another one, and then Greg Purcell as well. So those are going to be the three if you want to pin with myself as moderating. As we go through, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. If we have time at the end, we're going to be going through and opening it up for more of a conversation. If for some reason we don't get to that part at the end and you want to continue the conversation on with one of us, please feel free to put your information in the chat and we'll reach out to you. But today we're going to talk about how to track and support devices beyond the classroom. I'm going to be your moderator. My name is Anna Maria Galazzi. I am one of our solutions engineers at Hayes Software Systems, and I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of you over the phone and some in person. So I'm excited to kind of hear a little bit more about what you guys are doing and what questions you have. But with me on the panel, we have some of the most amazing Hayes customers, and I'm excited for them to introduce themselves. Bob, will you kick us off by giving your name, a little bit about your district and size, and how long you've been using our software?
Sure, thank you. Guess it's good afternoon for most of you. I'm on the West Coast. But my name is Bob Fistrom. I am the Director of Information Technology Services for the Mountain View Los Altos High School District. We have about 4,500 students, and we are a 1-to-1/BYOD district. I've only been in this district for 7.5 months. My prior district was Sequoia Union High School District in Redwood City, where we had 9,200 students, and we implemented Hayes there 4 years ago. So I've been using TipWeb IT for 4 years and get help in the former district for almost a year, and that's on the docket to implement in MBLA.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. Michael Procopio, it's your turn.
Great. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Procopio. I'm the Director of Technology for Pemberton Township Schools in New Jersey. Pemberton is a district of 5,500 students. Those students are spread out between 16 total buildings. That's educational and administrative buildings. We are one-to-one from grades K through 12, managing roughly 12 to 13,000 total IT assets. We've been working with Hayes for 2 years, and right now we're only utilizing the TipWeb IT platform for inventory and asset management.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. All right, Greg Purcell, you're on deck.
Gotta unmute that thing. Greg Purcell from Raven County Schools in Northeast Georgia. If you miss us, you're in North Carolina and Tennessee. We're in the very top north corner. We've been with Hayes for, I don't know, 3.5 years, I guess, using the TipWeb inventory management system. Been very pleased. This year we went live with their Get Help platform, and I think it's went real well. We're a smaller district. We are literally up in the mountains. All of our schools are on the side of a mountain, but we have around between 22 and 2,300 students. We are one-to-one for our 9th through 12th grade. And because of the pandemic, I'm pushing to see if we can increase that number to at least the middle schools going next year. And I believe we can do that. But we've been very pleased.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Now, I want to stay on the one-to-one. So, Greg, I'm going to have you kick us off. As we're talking about tracking these devices beyond the classroom, could you imagine bringing that one-to-one to a larger group without having a software?
Not in this lifetime. Prior to TipWeb, we were using an Access database to manage our inventory that was managed by one person about 4 years ago, and it was constantly a struggle. I would ask him, hey, I need a report of federal programs, Title I or whatever, of all the inventory, and I'd have to wait on him to do it. I wanted to bring that to a position where I had access to it as well as the school administrator so they could see their inventory. We went one-to-one 3 years ago for our 9 through 12. First year was a little bumpy for us because we were learning the system and we were learning the do's and don'ts with insurance tracking and who has what and so forth. But when we went to the pandemic mode a month and a half ago, we could not have done it without this because it was easy to just click and assign and then the student's responsible for it. So it worked out really well for us.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Greg, I'm going to pick on you for just a second. How have your processes changed as you're going one-to-one beyond the classroom?
For the high school, first year, like I said, was a little buggy. The second and the third year, this past year was probably the cleanest. The part that was the hardest for us was keeping up with which students paid for insurance and which ones haven't. So talking with Kathy, who is one of the customer support persons, and great, love Kathy. Talking with Kathy, she had the recommendation to just bulk assign a charge to all the students for insurance. And then when they came in and picked up their device and we scanned it and assigned it to the student, we could either clear the charge or leave it as outstanding, and that way we could easily tell which students had paid for it. So that was a big help for us.
Yeah, and Michael, you know, I'm curious, you guys implemented 2 years ago. How have your processes with one-to-one changed with this pandemic?
Well, our processes prior to having TipWeb were non-existent. So there wasn't any process change, there was the process development. So prior to TipWeb, we were in a similar position. We had an Access database that was in place. It was homegrown. The front end was developed by just somebody that tinkered and kind of built something. It was extremely inaccurate. It itself would lose records. It didn't communicate with our student information system. So it existed on the side, but wasn't really functional from a reporting, tracking, or management standpoint. So as we implemented the product 2 years ago, coming into the pandemic environment a couple of weeks ago, we would have probably just had boxes of equipment and would have just been slinging it out with willy-nilly had we not had TipWeb in place. Now when I'm asked about equipment by my superintendent and the business administrator who's keeping track of funds and whatnot, I'm pinpoint accurate as far as the number of devices I have left available to assign to students that are coming into the district, transferring. I can be pinpoint accurate when it's a matter of how many devices do we have to issue as spares or replacements. And students that claim they cannot complete their work that's assigned to them to do at home because they don't have a device, I am again pinpoint accurate. I know exactly what device they have, and I can cross-reference whether that device is being used through Google Admin Console. So I now have a level of accountability over what we purchased, what we're using, and whether that device is actually in the hands of a student and they're actually utilizing it for schoolwork. Everything I could not do if I didn't have TipWeb.
Nice, and that's a good point. When it comes to the reporting and the accuracy side of it, it's hard to get some of that when it's in an Excel sheet. So I'm happy to hear that we've been able with TipWeb IT to give you that accuracy and that pinpoint knowledge. Bob, you've now implemented TipWeb IT in 2 different school districts. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about why you wanted to implement it in your 2nd district now and how that process is taking with going remote.
I think that the best way to describe it is there's nothing worse as a director of technology than working blindly. And when you're pulled into a cabinet level, admin meeting level, and they're asking about inventory and budgeting and you don't have numbers, it's a pretty crappy feeling. And then you get into a reactionary mode and it just creates chaos. So, just to piggyback on what Michael just said, the pinpoint accuracy is unbelievable. What you can do with TipWeb. Last year, as I was finishing in my former district, I was able to replenish 1,200 Chromebooks, and that district used a cart model. I replenished 1,200 Chromebooks with never leaving my office. It was that simple, and that was possible because of TipWeb. So I can't speak enough about it, and I walked into a new district that is literally 2 miles from Google headquarters that had absolutely no asset tracking. So I walked into a blind situation again and immediately reached out to Hayes because I know that their product's the best. Looked at several different asset tracking products before adopting TipWeb in my former district. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit us right in the middle of implementation. But it was funny because we had a process set up for families to do drive-through pickups, and one of the legacy assistant principals was out there with a clipboard, and I told him to put it away and just said, make sure you tell the students to have their IDs ready and we're going to rock. And we're literally having families checked out in 10 seconds. We did not have them sign for the device only because of the pandemic and not knowing how the germs were spreading, but the drive-through was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and Bob, I'm curious, do you want to kind of walk through what that process looks like?
The checkout or the implementation?
The checkout.
Yes, we had all the Chromebooks and wireless hotspots from T-Mobile into TipWeb. That was the very first thing I wanted to put in. And Kathy, who Michael or Greg talked about, who's beyond amazing, I was talking to her in our weekly implementation meeting and was telling her that we were getting ready to distribute on Monday. And she said, well, if you're going to have students from all your sites showing up, I'm going to put them all into one school for you. And that way you're not going to be toggling between your school sites. And that way you can check out easily. And so we just set up an assembly line, like a drive-through in the parking lot. And the families came up and we scanned the ID, scanned whatever device we were checking out, and they were on their merry way. And then when I was done, I just contacted Kathy and she clicked some button on the back end and moved everything back to the respective site. So it was just seamless. And the assistant principal who wanted to write things down by hand pretty much just took a back seat to everything and directed traffic. So it was a beautiful thing. And it was a good mindset shift for him. Because I think when it comes to checkout and inventory, a lot of us have a fixed mindset, and it's time. It's 2020, folks. We need to have a growth mindset, especially around getting technology in the hands of students. You know, we don't know how long distance learning is going to be going on for. And to Michael's point, now we know who has devices, who needs them, where they are, how they're being used.
Piggyback on that as well. One thing that Kathy also helped us with, a lot of the inventory, like Bob was saying, some of ours is in carts, because we already had the 9th through 12th devices were already assigned to the students, so that really took a load off for us. But the rest of them, the Chromebooks were in carts, and they were assigned as a component of a parent. Kathy was able to pull all of our components and dump them into one location, so that we didn't have to go pull them out of the cart through the software. She did that, as well as what Bob said. She moved all of our students to what we call our central office, and that helped us to not have to switch from site to site, and so forth. That was a big time saver for us.
And I think that speaks to the partnership with Hayes, where, you know, I mean, they don't just sell your product and leave you on your own. It's an ongoing relationship. And in my 25 years of public education, this is like the partnership I'm most proud of. I'm not being paid to say that to the other participants out there. It's really true. Actually, it's to the point where they can almost bother you too much, but I won't get into that.
If I didn't know they weren't from Georgia, I would say they had a lot of Southern hospitality.
I'm going to claim it's the North Carolina in me for that. I don't know what it's Kristen's, who you guys get to work with, but we won't go there. All right. Thank you guys for talking about that one-to-one piece. You know, I'm curious, on the grand scheme of things, and how your roles as tech directors and working with these devices, how has that changed since COVID-19? Anyone can start.
I'll start. So the big struggle for Pemberton has been, so we have a large population as far as New Jersey districts are concerned. And the fact that we have one-to-one all the way down to our kindergartners, if a device malfunctions, if it needs to be replaced, if it's just not operating right, there's only so much telephone support that we can do with a second grader or with a non-tech savvy parent or guardian of a second grader. What's been difficult for us is coordinating how to quickly swap out that device. We've got struggles of, I can't just keep resources in buildings all day, every single day. So we've been utilizing different components of TipWeb to, once we have, 12 to 15 individuals that need to have a device swapped, then we schedule a pickup day. So I don't believe that that's an inherent design of Hayes, but it allows us to be flexible in the services that we identify that we need to provide. And really the heaviest lift for us during COVID hasn't been how to track and keep track, because we had been doing that for months. So it was a very small shift. It's really been coming up with a cycle to be able to quickly replace a device for somebody that's, more or less sequestered to their home, and for me to get my staff into the right locations to keep up with the needs.
We added, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Get Help piece, and we wanted to allow the parents and the students primarily to be able to reach out to tech support at any time. Like I said, we're not a big district. We are a smaller district, but we quickly put a tech support button on all of our district and school websites, and it's got an email link that they can email, and it goes straight into our tech support system, Get Help. And that's, surprisingly, we've had some parents that have utilized that. We also put in the cell phone numbers that our school assigned to the technicians, but it's sort of a half and half. We're getting some that are shooting straight into the Get Help, and they're responding because we can respond through Get Help, and it sends them an email and they'll respond right back. And some of them, amazingly, I've been surprised, are not tech savvy, but they have utilized the platform. With us, we did a major distribution about 3 times for devices for students who did not have a device at home. We did it at a central location. After that, we've been keeping up with what I call ones and twosies of students that are, we started out with one device that 3 kids were using, but as the pandemic has stretched on, they decided one device is not enough, so they're asking for more, for one, at least one for each student. And we're fine with that. But we've been accumulating, say, 4 or 5 at a time, and then we'll, as we do meal deliveries through our nutrition department, we'll allow the students to pick them up at that time.
Go ahead, Bob.
Very similar, and I don't have Get Help in the new district, but I think that how we use it in the former district, having that knowledge base when in there, so if a person starts typing a challenge they're having and the knowledge base pops up, proposed solutions or steps to take, that cuts down on a lot of the tech support that's often needed. So having that component in the program is definitely helpful. But like Greg was talking, we are setting up weekly distributions on those in need or those having problems with their hardware.
Yeah, and I'm curious, as you guys are moving in this direction, how are your technicians adapting to that turnaround to get these devices back into the hands of students as they break, or just getting that tech support out to them?
I think
it's actually been quite difficult.
Sorry.
Just as school students and school techs are sequestered at home, the support services to repair devices are critically low as well. China wasn't manufacturing for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. A lot of the repair parts come from that part of the world. At least my fleet is getting increasingly dwindled because I can't get anything repaired, or my repair times are extremely long right now. So I'm hoping to survive with the inventory and the turnaround that I have, but we have not in Pemberton adapted well from a repair or a maintenance standpoint very well. And that it's from forces that are well outside of our control.
From our perspective, I would say, of course, we're a small district, but our techs have adapted pretty well with using the cell phone and the software. They've done pretty well with coordinating with the students and the parents on some occasions to help them. Our concern was that we were going to be, can you fix my internet? It's running real slow, type technicians. But thankfully, that
Estoy en un Zoom meeting que me mandó la de tecnología ahora.
happened too bad.
No, pero no te...
So I
No,
think
lo tengo
guys are
apagado
doing
el
pretty
mío
well.
y
The
lo tengo...
students are adapting well as well. But I do have to agree with the other guy that the repair parts are getting a little slim. But thankfully, I was afraid we were going to have a lot of broke screens and things of that nature, but we surprisingly have not. I've only had about 3 so far, so we've been pleasantly surprised.
That's not a bad number. I was expecting a lot higher too. I've seen what some of these students do to their devices. Bob, for you, what has it been like for your technicians as they're seeing some of these repairs and help that they're needing to give?
It's been a culture shift for our technicians because it's just a new, it's a better system, but it's they need to change their mindset. So the turnaround time is a challenge right now with working from home. That's why we've just been collecting a device and issuing a new one. But once school's back in session, whatever the new normal looks like, we'll have to see how it plays out from there.
Yeah, and we at Hayes have had to move all remote as well. So we're constantly thinking about how has this changed us for the future. I'm sure you guys are thinking about some of that as well. And what type of new processes could you see coming out of this? And Michael, I want to start with you because you have unique opportunities at your district with how you guys are running things.
So you're looking for the post-corona, we're back in school, how have things changed because of it?
Yeah. Of course, it's just an assumption,
that's
right?
Tough. Yeah. I mean, that's tough. My main focus has been getting through the week getting through the school year, surviving the summer, and not a whole lot of processing as far as how do we have to adapt going forward. So I wish I had something for you, but I don't.
And that's fair. I mean, Michael, my normal is getting through the day and the week, so I totally understand.
Yeah. For sure. Honestly, I don't know, other than maybe maintaining a richer supply chain and maybe diversifying. So right now, all my hardware comes from one vendor, which from one standpoint of having that consistency as far as the product and the uniformity is fantastic. But that means one breakdown in supply chain, and my maintenance goes out the window. So while being uniform was great from one aspect, from a support standpoint and from troubleshooting, I'm finding that relying on this one manufacturer has kind of hamstrung me. So if anything, maybe going forward, I won't buy in mass from one vendor, one specific model. I'll try to diversify at least a small amount.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have on it. Greg, I'm curious for you, what type of new processes are you guys thinking about implementing after this?
Well, as mentioned earlier, I've really already gotten the approval from the superintendent to increase our one-to-ones, specifically with the middle school. It was actually perfect timing because our current middle school principal did not want to go one-to-one, but she's retiring this year. And the superintendent said, well, just tell the new principal that this is your new IT policy, that you're doing one-to-one. I was like, okay, I'm good with that. And really, we told them that, by the time school's out in just a few weeks, the students will have had a device in their home for a couple of months. So they're really doing one-to-one already. We did have to shift some processes with filtering and internet access. Prior to the pandemic, we had actually just done a survey real quick on which students had access to internet at home, because we are a rural district and there's topology and geography does not lay out too well for wireless in our area in some spots. And some of our area is they're not wealthy, to say the least. So hotspots were a quick commodity that has taken some time to get a hold of. But we finally got a hold of those. So that's some new things that we're going to implement next year is for students who do not have access. We'll start checking out hotspots on a limited basis and then increasing our one-to-one population. It's interesting, I'm on a tech list for the state of Georgia, and there's several messages popping up here about going complete one-to-one in a lot of the districts. I don't know that we can do that. I'd like to do that, but I don't know if we can do that at our district yet.
This might just be the opportunity.
It could, but that big dollar symbol is a big factor.
Okay, that's fair.
Yes.
And Bob, what type of opportunities are you seeing during this time that you can take moving forward and implement as a new process?
I just think it's, like I said, the culture shift and the mindset to better accountability and, more efficient processes. But I also see a need coming up in this new world we're living in, and that is as we are repairing and swapping devices, there's a cleaning component that we're going to have to really start considering. And I know Hayes is now offering that service, but I can really see that's something that we've been probably really not so good at, wiping down machines just in general. And I think that's going to definitely be a new part of the process, and protecting our workers too, with be it face masks or more latex gloves as they perform their work.
Yeah, and I'm going to want to get into it with you guys about how you're seeing your staff members, not your technicians, but the staff and students really adapting. But before we get into that, Bobby, you bring up a really good point about that sanitization piece, making sure that as they're coming back on site, that they're safe from infectious disease, safe from everything else that can be carried around on a device. I mean, it touches everything. Making sure that all of the ports are clean, the keyboards cleaned and wiped down, and really sanitized using CDC recommended guidelines, as well as EPA safe and green friendly. equipment on there and cleaning agencies. You know, I normally joke on phone calls. It's amazing how these devices kind of get into the hands of students and what they do with them. I believe I was on a call, it might not have been Bob, but someone was talking about how the students lick devices and they get into weird crevices, and it's just interesting of what happens. And so we want to make sure that as these devices are in the hands of students, that they're safe. Same thing goes for your staff. And so we've actually offered up sanitization services now where we can have a team come on site and do full sanitization. They are clean check certified through ISSA in pandemic cleaning and school cleaning and mobile device cleaning. So your devices are also going to be safe during that time. We can also collect them back for you so that your staff doesn't even touch the devices until after they've been sanitized, keeping them safe as well. And so this is one of the options that if you're interested in learning a little bit more, we can get you in touch with your national account executive and myself so we can go a little bit further into that. At this time, I also want to really tell you guys to start typing in any questions you have into the chat. We're going to open it up in a second for more questions. Before we go into that, I want to talk a little bit more about who we serve. And you'll see we have Rayburn County, MVLA for Mountain View for Bob, and we have this beautiful school for Pemberton, and then a bunch of other districts across the United States. Of all different sizes. Our smallest charter school has about 100 students in enrollment, and our largest is Chicago Public Schools, which has over 531 campuses. So we're able to be completely scalable to your needs. So as you're going through this call, and some of you have seen this a few times, we're really excited to kind of talk with you about this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you want to go into speaker view as we continue the conversation, the first thing that I really want to dive into, and Greg, I'm going to start with you. How are you seeing your students and staff members that are teaching really adapt into this time with their technology?
It's actually been interesting to watch because we've seen some, I'm just going to say, old school teachers that have been forced to use technology that weren't using it before. I've team viewed into some of our other teachers' devices and helped them with cameras, helped them with Google Classroom, and things of that nature, that especially at the primary school level, that they weren't really being forced to use it. We were already using this year was new for us. We rolled out a new help desk system with Get Help. We also rolled out a new single sign-on package. So it was new for all of them. And this really brought to light of those who weren't really using them because they were asking a whole lot of questions that if they'd been using it throughout the year, this wouldn't have come up. So some of the teachers brought up some good points on, can we have some more classes or more training on Google Classroom, which has been available for years now, but now they're being forced to use it. And talking with our superintendent, I really encouraged her, I don't care if they just do one class a day or a week, but something to encourage them to continue using it. So if this happens again, or if we have Snowmageddon or whatever, they can work from home and keep going forward. So.
Yeah, Michael, is there anything that you want to add to kind of how your people are adapting?
Yeah, definitely. So I tend to, for those that know me, I can tend to be kind of sarcastic and cynical at times. And what's come up quite a bit is I'll get pulled into a meeting, and the tone of the meeting will be kind of, everybody's very alarmed. How are we going to solve this problem? What tools or what resource can we use? And I would say the exact same tool and resource I presented to you guys, and we've had in the district for 1.5 years now, just I've never gotten any buy-in behind it. 10% of our population is using it, though we've been trying to force it out to them forever. So we've already got a solution. It's already ready to roll out. I've been emailing staff about it every 3 weeks for the past school 1.5 years. If they just use what is already in front of them, we'd be miles ahead. So this is one of those situations where sometimes in technology, it's tough to gain headway. It's tough to get buy-in because people are kind of stuck in doing what's their normal routine. So I've been able to move a lot of my initiatives ahead because people are now forced to use some of the technologies, the initiatives, the tools that have been there and ready for them. So pandemics are bad. This is a terrible situation, but within Pemberton, I probably shaved off 2 years of trying to do implementation of various technologies. You know, we modified our district policy within a first week of going into lockdown. So our district policy now allows for remote learning using video platforms like Zoom, like HD Meeting, like Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams. Those are all platforms that are available for my folks. So, you know, I'm thankful in a way that we've been able to make this progress. And, you know, sometimes you got to utilize the opportunities you're given.
Yeah, and you know, Michael, before I kind of let you off the hook, I'm curious. Did you have it in your district where you had to use that computer only on your network, or did you have it open for them to take home as well before all of this?
All systems, even before the pandemic, you are free to use it on any available internet connection. So we encourage the devices to go home.
Awesome. Greg and Bob, just a head nod. Were you guys the same way, or did or did you have to change it? All right, Greg, I'm curious, how did you take them off where it's your network only?
Using the Google Admin Console, we were able to basically remove that restriction, because the one-to-ones, yeah, they were able to use them anywhere, but all the others, no, they were restricted to the school, and that was to sort of encourage students not to take them home because they wouldn't be able to use them, and that worked. But now we've opened that up, and Get Help was able, TipWeb was able to help us with that, because we could see the carts that they were in, and then associate that with Google, and then remove the restriction.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm always curious on the districts that have that locked down, and that's more common than not, how they were able to remove that restriction so quickly. Bob, for you, I can see you laughing at me already. What are you seeing from your staff and students as they're adapting to this?
Pretty much the same thing Michael mentioned. It's finally, as terrible as the pandemic is, it's actually finally given ed tech the priority it's needed for many, many years. And those who were not prioritizing or even using technology are now forced to. So growth opportunity, and like Michael said, really a great opportunity to move initiatives forward and for technology to stay as a district priority, because technology devices are not going away. So it now becomes a leadership initiative and opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Michael Carter from San Bernardino County Superintendent, Office of Education, and if I mess that up, you can yell at me later, has a question. How are districts dealing with remaining CIPA compliant on devices and hotspots going home? And so, Bob, I want you to answer that one.
Well, you know, we're handing out Chromebooks, but everything we're giving access to is filtered either through the district's firewall or through securely. And in terms of the hotspots, we are with T-Mobile's Empowered Ed program, and they do have Cipa filtering, a Cipa compliant filter on those that they set up for you, or if you get the devices quicker than they're willing to give them to you, you have to set it up yourself, but it's a matter of going into each device and looking at logging in and making sure the filter is on appropriately. If you do go with T-Mobile, I'd recommend that having them do that for you, because I had 100 devices delivered that I had to insert SIM cards, batteries, and then log into each device and do that, and it was not a whole lot of fun.
You became an expert though after that one, huh?
My fingers are fat, but it worked.
Michael or Greg, is there anything you wanted to add to staying compliant as these devices are going home?
Ours was
So we didn't have
the same way. We already had the one-to-ones filtered through our firewall with our Porta clients, but the new ones that we sent home, we securely worked pretty well with us, and we were able to get them added on real quick, and that worked out great for us.
Awesome.
Yeah, Pemberton's a Goguardian shop, so we utilize Goguardian when the devices are off campus. So fortunately, that had been in place for already 2 school years, so we didn't have to make any adaptation.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. All right, so Bob, real quick, I know that you had fixed asset function integration with your ERP system at Sequoia. Can you talk about how that saved some time when it came to uploading these devices into TipWeb IT with that integration?
Yeah, Sequoia Union used a purchasing product called F2K. I think that's might be out of Michaels County. I'm not positive.
It is.
And we had a pretty talented programmer who was able to write a middle piece that the warehouse would tag something as a fixed asset and it would automatically sort it and then import it nightly into TipWeb IT, which made life beautiful. And we just dealt with receiving the items and saved a ton of time. So the integration was awesome and it worked. So hopefully it's being continued in my absence.
It is being continued. I can let you know that. And it's definitely helping them during this time as well. So I want to open it up for questions from our audience before we kind of go into final thoughts and anything that I missed from the guys. What other questions do you guys have that haven't been in the chat? I hope I answered some of them from our audience. All right, so Greg, I'm curious for you, what do you feel like in my questioning today that I might have missed as something that you guys have had to overcome as a hurdle or something that you're proud of that your district's been implementing?
I think you sort of hit on everything for us. Our biggest hurdle was with the pandemic in respects was getting all the component devices out of being a part of a component or being part of a parent and then getting those quickly distributed to the students. But in general, like I said earlier, when I came on board with Raven County Schools about 4 years ago, our inventory was a mess. It was not accurate in any way, shape, or form. And after we have scheduled audits every year now since we got TipWeb installed, and that has greatly brought our inventory back under control. But like Bob said, and Mike said, it is a little bit of a mindset shift for some of the administrators, because I caught some just telling their staff, here, take this home, it'll be okay. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. Because I'm responsible for the inventory. And the superintendent thankfully was on board with that and she backed me up. That's probably one of the biggest shifts, is trying to tell people, I know it's in your school, but I'm the one that's responsible for it and got to maintain it. So you got to let us know when you do these things, or preferably before you do these things. So.
Yeah, and I know as I was talking to some of the districts during this time of planning, I'm happy you brought up audits, because we're seeing a lot of principals, for example, starting to get very upset that their devices are being moved and used for students that are not in their schools, especially if they're bought with like Title I funds, or if we're moving access points that are bought with E-rate. And so, and I don't know if you're in the same position, but how are you planning to do an audit afterwards to kind of make sure everything gets back to where it belongs?
We're still working out the details on that. Our goal is probably going to be to return the devices back to the school where the student's school, instead of a central location. And then we will get them centrally located, because when we did the distribution, we brought all the carts down to the central location and then started stripping the carts from there. Admittedly, it's going to be a mess putting everything back together, but we'll scan everything to make sure we've got everything. And then we can start looking at really the status history of the devices to see which cart they were a part of, and then start putting them back together.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Bob, for you, when it comes to collection, what is your plan for collecting all of these devices back into the district?
We're going to start with seniors who are, and we'll withhold the diploma until we get the devices back. The district has a history of allowing 9th through 11th graders to keep their devices until they leave the district in any fashion. So it will be pulling the, just running a tag report in TipWeb and against students and then filtering out the 12th graders.
Awesome. Michael, is your plan a little bit different to get them back into the district, or is that similar to what you guys are planning?
So going back to what I said before, this pandemic has given me opportunity to actually move forward on some initiatives that I want. Since I got to Pemberton, I've been saying we spend a tremendous amount of time distributing this equipment. We then spend a tremendous amount of time collecting it. Why do we spend 2 weeks at the end of the school year only to recollect them for 6 weeks? So I've been encouraging that we allow the devices to stay in the hands of the students. And we're actually meeting next week as all the directors to see if that is feasible. I'm pretty certain that's what we're going to do. And obviously, we'll make the initiative to collect from seniors and fifth graders that are becoming sixth graders are going to convert from iPads to Chromebooks. So we'll collect and redistribute those. But I believe that my multi-year goal of not wasting so much time collecting and redistributing will move forward. So I'm happy about that.
Awesome. And Amanda Turner, and I'm sorry, Amanda, I don't remember what district you were with, put in the chat, there will be a lot of cost and attention associated with the reopening of schools in the fall. At the same time, there's clearly a need to provide one-to-one to ensure education continuity. How are districts thinking about the balance between these needs on a fixed and limited budget? Can leaders pursue both priorities at scale? What are asset efficiencies, i.e. cost savings, that come via better accountability and management? So Bob, Greg, Michael, who wants to take that one?
That's kind of dicey. So Pemberton has always been a little bit loose, or at least I definitely have been. There's a rule: if you got 1,200 kids, you buy 1,250 devices, right? You maintain a little bit of a surplus inventory, but you stay pretty lean because you don't want to have too much money tied up. Budgets are tight and whatnot. We were able to fulfill and keep devices in hand because I always exceeded that purchasing rule. I had inventory on hand. I had devices that were on their way back from being repaired. And as you know, we were going into lockdown and everybody and their brother was showing up saying, I need a device at home. I need a device at home. And this was staff, because we already had students covered, obviously, but staff members saying that they don't have anything that they can teach from at home. Fortunately, we had been purchasing in bulk. We did have ample supply. We didn't have to make any emergency purchases. So it's a double-edged sword. If you try to do it as economically, on the day you need it, you're then scrounging to get funds, and typically you're going to overpay for something at that point. So it's 5-1 or 6-1, half a dozen of the other.
That's a long question and a good one, but I've got to go back to, like, working blind as a tech director sucks, and if you don't have an asset tracking, you're not being fiscally responsible. It's that simple in my opinion. And as a side note, when I was with Sequoia Union, I gave a county office presentation at San Mateo County Office of Ed and showed them the process we had done in implementing TipWeb IT and Get Help. And I had a director from the other district come up to me and she said, wow, that is awesome, but I'm not willing to put in the time. Well, you're gonna have to put in the time one place or another. And having it up front in a system where you can account for it, to know what you need to order and when things are reaching its end of life. At this point in our careers and the emergence of technology everywhere, not having an asset tracking system is really shooting yourself in the foot. And if people think Google Sheets, FileMaker Pro, or Microsoft Excel is asset tracking, they're wrong. It is not going to work the way it needs to work to maximize efficiency and knowing what you have, when it expires, what's checked out, et cetera. I mean, I just can't imagine not having this kind of a system in this day and age.
I have to completely agree with the other two. It was great to be able to, at a click of a button, see how many Chromebooks we had left that were not assigned to anybody. It was also quick to see if there was a student trying to check out more than one device, that they already had one assigned to them. We're doing things a little bit different than the other two. Our seniors are actually going to get to keep their devices if they graduate. Now, I've heard some say about the 9 through 11 keeping their devices during the summer. In the past, we have taken those up. But I have to agree, it is a time consumption, major. We hire a teenage student to come in and clean all the Cheetos out of the keyboards and clean all that stuff up. And you laugh, Anna, but it's true. It looks like they just crumble it up in the bag and just leave it there. That and their dogs like to sleep in the Chromebook bags. But anyway, I think we may be changing that policy for us and allow the 9 through 11 to keep them during the summer. It's sort of a gamble. If they damage it, if they start school with a damaged device, are we going to get slammed at the beginning of the school year with a bunch of repairs, or do we do it during the summer? One way or the other, I think we're going to get hit. But I love the functionality of, and one other piece about TipWeb is you can put a lifespan on a device and you can quickly see how many is ending its lifespan or it's about to be no good, such as a 5-year Chromebook in a sense. That's easy for us to quickly see how many devices we need to look at being replaced.
Yeah, and there's 2 ways in TipWeb IT, just real quick, where you can do that. You can have projected life on the actual device product that you're putting in, and you can also have your model end of life. So as Google's putting out what that model end of life is going to be, you know, when you can no longer use that device for testing or things that are important to a school district, we now have 2 places in TipWeb IT where you can do that and pull reports off of that, either a canned report or build it on your own.
Yeah, another important thing with the TipWeb and Get Help integration that I just want to point out to everybody attending, in my former district, we had a particular projector model we were having problems with. And by being able to track and get help every time that device is being repaired, you know, it keeps a running record in TipWeb. Sorry, my phone's ringing. I actually had to get on the phone with this projector company to let them know, you know, we think we have a model that's failing. And the lady said, she's like, okay, well, get back to me with your count and, you know, how many devices we're dealing with here. And I said, well, don't hang up on me. And within, you know, 60 seconds, I was able to pull that on a tag report in TipWeb, because that's how simple the system is to use, and you can save that query. So again, you're not working blind, and that's also helping you make other decisions on, if I'm having a problem with this model, am I going to continue buying that model? Like on the SEDPA listserv here in California, I've noticed on the HP Chromebook, I think it was the G6 model, there's been a lot of problems with the keyboard. Well, if you're tracking that, you would, you know, think twice before you're going to buy that model again. So these are beyond budgeting decisions here. These are best practices on what devices we are ordering that are getting the most bang for their buck for our staff and our students.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the integration between IT and Get Help. And there was a feature that was released earlier this year that now allows you to pull some of those reports as they go into repair a little bit easier than what Bob was doing. So now instead of 60 seconds, we have that report pulled down to like 10 seconds just because of how we're tracking it now. So Bob was our case study for that one. Bob, is there anything you want to share about why TipWeb IT, why Get Help, and how this has helped you at either district?
Again, it's the accountability and not working blind, and it's the partnership, because if I have an idea, I can call the 800 number or reach out to my customer success manager, and I've never gone more than an hour without being responded to. In the almost 4 years, the response is that quick, and if they don't have an answer, they make sure they get back to you with an answer in a, you know, reasonable amount of time. So I don't think you can put a price on customer service and just having somebody available all the time. One of the other companies I had originally looked at was out of the UK, and a 9-hour time difference is just not acceptable when you need to give your end users an answer. So I can't speak enough about the partnership.
You know we love you too. Michael, is there anything that you want to add to the why TipWeb IT conversation?
The why TipWeb IT? So when I came to Pemberton, there was no inventory or asset tracking system in place. I knew I needed to bring one in. I was tasked with finding one by the existing administration. Wanted something that integrated with our student information system, which to them was a pretty short order on their request list. But in fact, it was quite quite difficult to find a vendor that could integrate. I started with all the big name inventory folks out there, and they couldn't do it. I don't recall exactly how I became engaged with TipWeb, but you guys were the only ones. Well, I'm sorry. All vendors said they could do it. TipWeb was the only ones that proved that they could do the integration with my student information system that I needed. So being able to actually deliver on a requirement is why TipWeb got my business. So they were able to deliver to, actually probably 3 years ago when we first engaged. And there have been similar heavy lift requests from them as well. And every time you guys have continued to deliver.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And I let Michael know yesterday that he was one of my first demos when I started demoing for TipWeb IT. So he holds a special place in my heart as well. Greg, I'm going to pass over to you. You implemented Get Help recently. And so I'm curious why TipWeb IT and Get Help?
Well, it's sort of like what Bob said. It's sort of a partnership. I know that when TipWeb or when Hayes was developing Get Help, we were blessed with the opportunity to get to have several conversations with Hayes on, well, these are features that I don't want to lose if I switch from our current help desk solution to Get Help. And for us, that was going from a free solution to a paid solution. And we were willing to make that switch because Hayes worked with us and they kept sort of hitting at it until they got it right. And I appreciated their listening to us so that we weren't just shooting in the breeze. And like Bob or Mike said, they weren't just saying, yeah, we can do that. Because I've had some big name companies say, oh yeah, we can do all that, or we can script that. Yeah, the proof is in the pie, and Hayes delivered with everything that we asked for. And thankfully it hasn't stopped. If we found an issue, they were quick to get it resolved. But I have to agree, I don't like shooting in the dark either, and I like to have a finger on our inventory to what we have. I don't know about the other districts, but we have to provide to the state yearly a list of our certain types of inventory. What ratio do we have of desktops per students or laptops per students and so forth. And it was impossible with that Access database. But this is a whole lot easier. And then the integration with Get Help into our inventory, if there's a device that breaks and we assign it, that has been phenomenal. We've been really pleased.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We did get a question from someone about more information about how to clean and disinfect. And I'm sorry I missed it in the chat. Patrick and Tim have resent it to me, so I apologize for that one. But when it comes to sanitization of devices, our team is industry leading and normally clean for hospitals and for hospitality. They're actually Marriott's #1 choice when it comes to cleaning any of their rooms and they've also been now certified in that pandemic cleaning, as I mentioned, in the mobile device cleaning. There's a 7-step process that they do that takes into account the keys and the crevices in the keys. You know, Greg was talking about those Cheetos that get crumbled up in there. We've definitely seen that. And so this is going to take in every type of hole or orifice that it has. So all of your ports, making sure that everything is wiped down, cleaned in, airbrushed, has what we call a dwell time. So how long the device needs to actually stay wet in order for it to be clean and disinfected properly. If you guys are like me at all, I am guilty of wiping down my phone and then drying it so I can immediately use it again. This allows for them who are our experts to know exactly how to do that and not make the same mistakes that I would be making with a Clorox wipe, and using those certified devices and certified cleaning agents on your devices. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, we are happy to get you that 1-pager and the mobile device cleaning infographics so you can talk about that. And I'll let Tim or Patrick kind of get your information for me, since I am not the best at the group chat is what we're learning. Bob, Michael, Greg, we have 3 minutes left. Is there anything that you guys wanted to add or share in your last statement?
I would just say that these are the best company I've ever worked with. look forward to more future work with Hayes. And I think districts are really foolish not to adopt asset tracking in this day and age.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I'll concur with that. Asset tracking at this point isn't it's not a want, it's an absolute necessity. If it's not Hayes, it feels as though it should be Hayes, but if it's not, you've got to get yourself some sort of product in order to do it. So you just be confident in what you're purchasing and why you're purchasing it.
I'll echo all of the above, but I'll also say, you know, I've been in technology for almost 30 years. Worked with a lot of different companies, and I would put Hayes pretty close to the top on customer service and listening, and then providing what they say they're going to provide. So that's me.
Thank you, guys. And thank you so much for everyone who joined today. It was nice getting to put some faces with names and seeing, I'll give another little shout out to Pitt County just because I love you guys so much. But if you guys have any questions off of this meeting or need anything moving forward, please reach out to us at Hayes. You can find us at sales@hayessoft.com. Or if you know your national account executive, you can reach out to them, and a few of them have been on the call today. So shout out to Heather, Patrick, Tim, Kristen, Chuck, Blake, and I'm sure I'm missing some people that I'm going to, oh, and Weston, that I'm going to get yelled at for later. But thank you guys to our panelists. You guys are awesome, and we really appreciate everything that you guys are doing and how you're helping your students and staff every day. I look forward to talking to you guys all very soon, and have a great rest